Section 4. Summary of actions from Section 3. Table 2 shows a summary of actions from Table 1 with cross-referencing to the Charter. Action 1. Principles and commitments to fairness and equality in resources are developed within the VAWG sector at local and national level between white-led organisations and by and for black and minoritised women's organisations. This relates to funding and appropriation. Number 2. Support a shared statement and vision to funders and government that we need by and for black and minoritised women's organisations. This relates to funding. Number 3. Work to ensure sector-wide meetings, local, national and international, include invitations to by and for black and minoritised women's organisations. This relates to partnerships and collaboration. Number 4. Events including seminars, conferences, workshops include the voices of black and minoritised women. This relates to partnerships and collaboration. Number 5. Partnerships are equitable and ensure representation and input starts with by and for black and minoritised women's organisations. This relates to partnerships and collaboration. Point 6. Partnerships agree shared approaches to conflict resolution based on shared commitments at the outset. This relates to funding, partnership and collaboration. Number 7. White-led organisations ensure they are not appropriating from black and minoritised women's services by questioning who is the true owner of this work before embarking on it. This relates to appropriation. Number 8. Survivor and children engagement in services is representative. This relates to representation and engagement. Number 9. Every organisation signed up to the Charter establishes an equity, diversity and inclusion working group, or work is taken on by an existing appropriate alternative internal working group with a permanent mandate to report to their Board of Trustees at agreed intervals. This relates to leadership and governance. Number 10. Develop a best practice approach to monitoring and reporting on diversity, lived experience and protected characteristics within our organisation, including on race pay gaps, representation, recruitment and promotion. Processes should be appropriate to the organisation and fully protect the anonymity of staff and volunteers. This relates to leadership and governance. Number 11. The EDI working group to input into responses of any individual complaint made relating to racism and structural inequalities, and to audit how the organisation responds to and redresses complaints. If staff are not confident in internal reporting processes, an independent or third-party mechanism is considered. This relates to leadership and governance. Number 12. Every organisation signed up to the Charter ensures that its strategic objectives and the outcome of its work are based on an intersectional analysis, addresses the needs of black and minoritized survivors it works with or on behalf of, and that mainstream work in the organisation does not have a differential impact on black and minoritised survivors. This relates to leadership and governance. Number 13. Senior management and board members at white-led organisations educate themselves on anti-racist principles and issues relevant to our sector, using materials collated by the sector-wide anti-racism group and made available in a shared sector-wide space to be kept updated. This relates to leadership and governance. Number 14. Senior management and board members at white-led organisations provide opportunities to educate staff and others, which could be volunteers, interns or consultants, on racism principles and issues affecting our sector, and spaces for ongoing reflection on white privilege and white supremacy. This relates to leadership and governance. Number 15. Organisations signing up to this charter can make use of a standard tool to assess their own performance internally. This relates to leadership and governance. Number 16. Recruitment and progression is anti-racist, adopting anti-racist practice and striving to achieve equitable representation at every level, including volunteers, interns, staff, consultants and board members. This relates to leadership and governance. Number 17. The Board of Trustees is representative with consideration by the Chair and founding or existing trustees of what would be representative for the organisation. This relates to leadership and governance. Number 18. The staff team is representative with consideration by the board of what would be representative for the organisation. This relates to leadership and governance. Number 19. Establish sector-wide informal mentoring or support groups or affinity networks for black and minoritised women working with white-led organisations, hosted by second-tier organisations. These groups or networks may offer mentoring by more senior to more junior black and minoritised women working across different organisations within the sector. Such groups may also offer professional development opportunities and empowerment programmes outside of staff's own organisations. This relates to leadership and governance. Number 20. The work of second-tier organisations on mentoring and support networks to be funded through contributions from across the sector. This relates to leadership and governance. Number 21. White-led organisations to enable their black and minoritised staff to participate in affinity networks within working hours and to have their workloads adapted accordingly. White-led organisations to value and make space for white allyship work by their staff within and outside the organisation. This relates to leadership and governance. Number 22. Black and minoritised women who contribute to anti-racism work internally within their own organisations to have this work valued, including its emotional toll and their workloads adapted in recognition of the additional demands. This is related to leadership and governance. Number 23. Black and minoritised women's organisations are prioritised for consultancy to white-led organisations on how to carry out anti-racism work such as racial equity impact assessments or EDI assessments, or provide mentoring or empowerment programmes such as consultancy work to be paid for or provided on a skills swap basis. This relates to leadership and governance. Number 24. Second-tier organisations to provide a shared space for member white-led organisations to showcase EDI or other anti-racism work, to provide ideas and good practice examples to promote discussion on strategies. This relates to leadership and governance. Number 25. Second-tier organisations to provide a shared space for member white-led organisations to report back on race pay gaps, progress on EDI and other anti-racism work as a mutual accountability framework for white-led organisations, as inspiration to one another, also visible to their sister black and minoritised women's organisations. Such a shared space will also facilitate honest debate and mutual learning in the context of shared striving for progress. This is related to leadership and governance. Number 26. Always consider any differential impacts of policy proposals on black and minoritised women and others facing intersecting oppressions, as well as whether their particular needs are reflected in policy positions. This relates to policy and influencing. Number 27. White-led organisations seek out the expertise of black and minoritised women's organisations and coordinate policy strategy with them. Black and minoritised women's organisations to be credited and remunerated for their expert contributions to policy and influencing work wherever possible. This relates to policy and influencing. Number 28. White-led organisations seek the input of black and minoritised women in policy forums such as working groups, reference panels and government consultations with time and expertise compensated. This relates to policy and influencing. Number 29. Redress the underrepresentation of black and minoritised women on platforms and spaces to which we are invited. This includes ensuring black and minoritised women's involvement and voices in events we organise and questioning underrepresentation where we are guests. This relates to policy and influencing. Number 30. White-led organisations share contacts of influential individuals such as journalists, politicians and key government officials with black and minoritised women's organisations. This relates to policy and influencing. Number 31. Communications, whether written, media or presentation, at a local and national level are representative of black and minoritised women, and funding bids ensure this is included so resourced properly. This relates to communications. Number 32. Organisations deliver accessible communications and resources for survivors, including building in translation costs to the outset of our projects. This relates to communications. Number 33. White-led organisations share media and publicity opportunities with black and minoritised women's organisations. This relates to communications. Number 34. White-led organisations always direct journalists to black and minoritised women's organisations first on issues impacting black and minoritised women. This relates to communications.